Hi everyone. Thanks for joining in the live stream today. We're glad you made it and we hope we can be a useful resource for bettering your health and habits. We are KinFlow, a wellness company, and we want to change the way people look at health. We believe there hasn't been enough of a focus on wellness, and wellness is defined as a state of being in good health, especially as an actively pursued goal. By reframing health improvement through wellness, we believe there will be compounding improvements in all parts of your life and in your community. If you have any questions, type it into the chat and our KinFlow moderators will be able to help answer you. At the end of this presentation, we'll also have a dedicated Q&A period to answer any individual questions. Check out our Instagram and Facebook page at kinflow.wellness, where we put up loads of content to help you incorporate wellness into your life at your own speed. Now, today's topic is going to be focused primarily on hip, shoulder, and wrist mobility. And these are common areas where people tend to get tight, and these tightness issues can result in pain that show up somewhere else in the body. For the most part, lower back pain, you've got a hip mobility issue. If you have neck pain, it's shoulder mobility issue. If you have elbow pain, it's a wrist mobility issue. So today we're going to be going over a couple good stretches that you can do as a routine. We'll link all the videos into the comments. We'll link it elsewhere. You can message us if you need it, but they'll be found on YouTube. And just so that we get a good start, the first video we're going to go through is the stretching routine. Now, I'm not going to be playing the sound, but I'll be fast forwarding through the parts that I'm going to be explaining myself. So, here we go. Okay, so here's the open. I'm just crawling and explaining and explaining. Now, what we're going to be talking about in this part of the video is there's going to be some basic stretches just to get started. Again, a good warm-up routine is going to be warm up. That means a low intensity kind of cardio thing if you want, or just in place, just kind of start rolling the body around. Then we'll get into static stretches, and then we'll get into mobility drills. And once we've hit it in that order, then you'll be able to go into your full workout, or that can actually be your full workout if you haven't done any of these things before. So going through this right now, what you'll see is I'm just reaching forward and I'm seated, and I'm gonna have my ankles pretty relaxed here. And then all I'm gonna start doing to really get the stretch going is I'm gonna reach forward as far as I can, and it doesn't have to be so far that you're gonna be tearing anything, but I'm gonna pull my toes up. Now I'm gonna actually rewind real quick and pause right there. The act of pulling your toes towards yourself is going to start stretching your posterior chain in your legs and really through your whole body. But you will really start feeling the stretch maybe behind the knees, in the hamstrings, or even in the calves. So start with your ankles being really relaxed, reach forward, and then start pulling upward. And you can just pulse through this a couple times. I'm pretty sure I'm explaining it in the video. Yeah, there we go. So now what we're going to do is we're going to get into the next one. And the next part is an ankle mobility drill. Now we'll get more in depth in the ankle mobility, but I kind of like starting with these routines just because it's a good way to prepare the body for some of the other mobility drills we'll go into. Now how I'm positioned here is I'm planting, let's reverse a little bit. I'm going to plant my foot on the ground, and I'm going to try to position so that I can get my knee positioned forward over the toe line. And for some people, they're not going to be able to bring their knee down. So you can always back up a little bit like I'm showing here and out a little bit. But from here, I'm going to hold my foot in place, making sure that my thigh is aligned with my foot. And then I'm just going to push and force the knee forward past the toe line while trying to keep my foot flat on the ground. Just going to go forward and back a little bit. And one of the things you really want to pay attention to is where your hips are rotated. So that's why it's kind of important to position that other knee out to the side just so you can get some support. And just so you can see it from a different angle, here you'll see that my knee is pointing forward, my toes are pointing forward, and my other leg is positioned behind, so then I can just get some good support. And then what I'm doing in this part of the stretch is I'm trying to encourage more rotation in the ankle. So I'm just guiding my knee forward and then creating an arc of movement side to side. Now, after here, some of the other positions we're going to want to be in, this is just to kind of start stretching the glutes, and we're going to try to pull the ankle up above the knee. And for those of you who need to, you can always lean back, raise the foot, and then just try to bring your chest and your chin forward. Now, it's not necessary to crank your neck, but what you can do is just bring your chest towards your ankle, and you'll start feeling a pretty deep stretch. For those of you with lower back pain, this is a good piriformis and glute stretch that can kind of help to relieve some of that tightness. Now, for those of you who have difficulty with that position, you can actually even start by laying on your back. And then all you're going to do is you'll reach one hand, just so you can see all the angles, reach one hand through the open space, other hand from the outside, and while you're resting on your back, you'll just pull and lift everything upward. And I'm just giving you all the angles so you guys can know how to do this on your own. Okay, now once we finish that one, we're going to be getting into a stretch. This is going to start opening up the hips. Now we're positioned with our foot wide, and we're going to bring the knee down. Now this is kind of a little bit of a preview for one of the main drills that we want to do. This is the leg internal rotation, specifically at the hip. So one of the things that you'll find is that a lot of you won't have that flexibility. You won't be able to naturally go all the way down unless you start raising one side of your hips up off the ground. So you'll see that I'm leaning, and that allows me to drop it, but my hips aren't flat on the floor. So we only want to work within the range of motion that we have control of. So it's really key that you just position yourself on the floor and go as far as you comfortably can. You'll find that over time you can actually get all the way down, but in the beginning just work within your ability. And this looks weird, and it'll feel weird, especially if it's your first time doing it, but it really helps to open up the hip mobility and reduce the stress on the lower back. Now in this stretch, it's a butterfly stretch. I'm just going to have my knees out, feet together, seated, and I'm going to pull my feet in towards my hips. And from here, I'm just going to start stretching by leaning forward into it. And you can position your hands behind you to give you some support, but some people can even just grab onto their ankles and pull downward. From here, grabbing my foot, and I'm not pulling my feet off the ground, I'm using it to anchor and pull my torso down towards my feet. Some of you will notice that when I do this, you can actually see my elbows go all the way down. For those of you who get a lot of good rotation in the hip, you'll be able to do it. This is something you can work towards, but this isn't necessarily a starting goal right off the bat. And I'm just going to pulse up and down a couple times. You get used to it. And the nice thing is that these are all routines that you can do just with open space. There's no equipment that I'm using to do any of this. And now I think this might be the final stretch, maybe not, but I'm going to position myself with my knees wide and my feet behind me equally as wide as my knees. My toes will be pointed out but fairly relaxed. And from here, all I'm going to do is position myself nice and evenly, not with feet together, not with feet super wide, but right in the middle. Keep it all aligned. And you drop as low as you can forward. And then while you're resting on your elbows or on your hands, you're going to push your hips backward. And you'll find that this helps to really stretch out the groin, as well as start working some of that internal rotation in your hip. Now this part of the video is key. This is part of the recovery. So if you start getting into this stretch and you feel any cramping in your hips, you'll want to do what you see here, where we fall forward, lifting the feet up in the air, and then you bring your knees together, and then you can get safely out of this stretch. And this is just a good way to get out if it starts cramping up, which can happen especially if you're very tight in these areas. Okay. Now the next thing we're going to do is we've hit a lot of the posterior chain, the back part of the leg, and we've started working a lot of the hip rotation, but you have to keep it even. So these next stretches are for the front of the thigh in the quadriceps. Now what I'm going to do is just fold one leg back, and I'm going to lean backwards onto my elbows. Some of us might be able to go completely flat on the ground. Now, this is a very stressful knee position for some people, so consider what you just saw to be more advanced. For those of you who need an easier version, you'll see that I'll switch to, that's not it, here we go. So I'm just going to use a couch. Now for those of you who have a couch or a chair or an ottoman or even a stack of pillows, you can do this on your own. I'm going to place it on the ground, and I'm going to rest my knee down and raise my ankle up. And then from here, my other foot goes in front, and I'm going to lean back and bring my hips forward. Now the pillow that you use under the knee should be cushioned enough that it's comfortable to rest on, but primarily this is just to make sure that for those of you with severe knee issues, that you're not going to crunch it into that very tight angle the way that I was when I was laying on my back. And then there's an alternate thing you can do where you reach your arm up and stretch away from the bent knee. Again, this video will be posted so that you have access to it, where I'll fully explain it in the video as well. Okay, and I believe that should be it. Now, one of the things is that this can be a very unstable position. You might fall side to side. So you'll see that I grabbed my dog's staircase, and I just use it on the side as support. If you have a chair, you have another ottoman, or even more pillows, feel free to use those to help be some support. But don't feel like you have to force yourself to have perfect balance when you're doing this. All right, and that's it. So for that, that's the stretching part of the video. Now we're working into some of the more specific mobility drills. And this is going to start us off with the wrists. Now for the wrists, what I'm going to do is start by resting on the ground. If this is difficult for you, you could stand up and put it down onto the couch, edge of your bed, onto a kitchen table, anything that causes you to get that bent wrist and extended arm angle. And you'll see that I'm going to plant my hands with my fingers pointing behind. And then I'm just going to sit in this position and hang out. Breathe, relax. I'm not locking out my elbows. It's going to stay a little bit bent. And then I'm going to just gently oscillate side to side. For some of you, this is going to be very tough in the wrist because you just haven't done it to this point. So it's okay if your fingers don't point all the way behind you. If they go a little bit to the outsides, that's okay. But we want to work our way up to it. Now from here, actually, I'm going to point it back. And again, you're going to rotate outward so the fingers point behind you. And you can do this one hand at a time. And then you can also do this one hand in the middle. It doesn't have to be on the outside. If it's too much stress for you to put your hand down, you'll see that I actually rest my other hand on my thigh. And what this does is it takes some of the weight off. Be careful when you're doing this. You don't want to just crunch your wrist into this angle. A lot of people have pretty poor wrist mobility. So this can be very tough right off the bat. I'm going to stay tall. And that's it. Now you also have the option of doing it with both hands. And don't worry about getting the heel all the way down, but eventually you'll work your way up to it. Now this next one, you're going to start with your palm facing up, and you're going to rotate it inwards so that your palm is now sky, fingers towards yourself. And from here, this is going to start stretching the top of the forearm. And from here, just to keep it secure, I use my other hand to hold the arm straight down into the ground. And you'll actually see that my elbow is going to be rotating in this position. Now this looks really weird. You might need to do this with just one arm at a time so you can focus on getting that movement. But again, this is a slow, gradual thing. You don't need to achieve full movement right off the bat. Over time, you'll loosen up and you'll get further and further. Now, the next one, and this is kind of where we start getting into not just the wrist work and elbow, but now into the shoulder. A lot of people tend to not be completely up overhead. They might be a little bit forward, they might be a little bit out to the sides, and that's okay. A lot of the problem from there comes from the lack of ability to internally rotate the arm in the overhead position. You'll see some people try to start tilting parts of their body so they can do it, but that's not what we need. So from here, you're going to start by resting on your knees, and you're going to turn your arms inward. And this looks weird. I call this one the exorcist push-up, but it goes by many names. And what you'll see is that with the other hand, you don't want to go outward, you want to go inward. So from a different angle, hands down, pointing inward, and eventually towards yourself. Now once you get the hands twisted enough, you can move your knees back to give your body some space, and it's as simple as reaching downward while keeping your hands flat on the ground. Here. Now, for those of you who want to get just started with this, don't worry about reaching all the way down. And it looks funny, it feels funny. And then when you extend the arm straight, that's when you'll feel the stretch most in the forearm. When you're moving downward, that's when you're going to feel it most in the shoulder. And of course, there's ways to make this easier and harder, but just start with what you can handle first. All right, that takes care of our wrist and our shoulder mobility. Now this next one. Okay, so this just brings us back to our hip mobility, and I just want to reiterate because this really is the most important one in my opinion. All the time we're sitting in a chair or we're sitting in a car. All that sitting gets the hips to kind of get used to that position that really our body wasn't designed for. So by doing these mobility drills, you can almost fix the movement capacity that your hip has. And this does a lot for helping with any back pain you might currently have or for preventing it in the future. So if you sit a lot, this is the drill to do. And you'll notice that now I have both feet positioned and both knees up. I just lean back a little bit and I'm just moving one leg in and out at a time. We drop down, we drop out, reset, down and out, down and out. And then for those of you who are more advanced, you can do it without your hands. This is very advanced. Don't just jump into this one. Use some support. Now the next one is going to be the half W position. This is more advanced again. Now that we've started moving with rotation, we're going to try to activate the muscles to strengthen the rotation. And what you'll see is that I'm positioned in a way so that my knee is going to be right up against my foot and I have both knees bent and my other ankle behind. And I'm going to try to stand up and press my hips forward and then slowly control the way back down. You might need to use your hands when you do this and have some items on either side of you, but eventually this is again advanced. You'll want to do this up and down without any assistance. Up and down. And it's important that you make sure to do this on both sides. Otherwise, one hip will start taking all the movement and the hips will rotate. Slew of issues from there. Now this is another advanced drill where you're trying to switch from position to position. Now the position we're in right now is called a half W sit. And what you'll notice is that if both legs were to go behind, it would form a W. As a side note, you'll sometimes see toddlers doing this. It's not necessarily good for them, but it's not terrible for them. But just for the sake of knowing the name, this is the half W position. And we're going to try to alternate from one half W to the other half W. And you'll see that I'm doing it without my arms. Again, very advanced. If you need to, use your hands behind you, have some support. Okay. So this one's a little gnarly. So you'll start in the half W position. You'll go up on your knees, make sure your hips are all the way forward, and then your back leg will step forward into a lunge, and you'll stretch the hip into this position here. This is very, very advanced, but a good thing to see so that you can work your way up to it. It's really helpful to know what we're not able to do, because then we could take those smaller baby steps to work our way to what we need to be able to do. And I would consider this an essential human movement. And I just return back and down. And then of course we're going to switch it to the other side, where I'll go up on my knees, hip forward, and then with good control come back down. Now for a lot of you doing this your first time, please have objects to your sides so that you can have support. Being balanced just on one knee as you go up and around can be very unstable. So that way you don't fall and injure yourself. Now this is just another alternative for stretching the front of the hip, and I would say that this is going to be considered advanced for some people because it's unstable, but also it's a higher surface. A lot of you will just be able to do it from the ground onto the ground, but if you need that extra stretch, go up onto a higher surface. And we twist, we go down, we go out. Just again, we're opening up the hip mobility here. And again, very advanced. You don't have to be able to do this properly right from the beginning. This might take you a couple weeks, so be patient. I would say to do these videos 1 or 2 times a week. All right, now that takes care of that one. And the final video. I've got my puppy in this one. I'm excited. Okay, so what we've got here is, again, for the wrist mobility, shoulders, and this is just a little recap. Fingers point back. We lean forward, and then we're just going to rock gently side to side. Some of these videos I explain what's going on. Some of these videos I'm not saying anything. This is just a quick recap video. Now the next one hand, hold it down in position, and again you can do circles with this movement. You can do the opposite circle. We're just trying to promote some more mobility in the wrist, which is great if you play a lot of video games and you're just to make it easier. And here's viewing it from the side. We internally rotate the hands, don't go outward. And you'll see that I'm really trying to push away from the ground. I'm extending my arms and pushing away from the floor in this position. Then from here, one hand, palm facing up, and we're rotating the elbow. And again, you're watching for the elbow movement. And then I get so distracted by him. I love him. All right, now for the next one, we're going to do the palms internally rotating. This is a reminder that the hands go down internally rotated, reach down, extend up. And remember, you want to work your way to doing it like this. This isn't something that's naturally achievable right off the bat. So palms down, fingers facing back, palm up, fingers facing back with rotation. And refer back to these videos. If you know anybody who could benefit from these, make sure that you share it with them so that they can also start learning the slow and steady process. Now we're going to just hop on back. Okay, so What we covered were mainly just some basic stretches in the beginning and then some more advanced mobility exercises. So for those of you who are working out at home and have your own program you're following, doesn't matter if it's weight training, doesn't matter if it's cardio, it doesn't matter if it's even just, yoga. You can do all these routines to start. And for those of you who are just beginning your training, this can be your routine. This is all you have to focus on. You can develop strength later, you can develop endurance later, but the first thing that everyone should have is proper movement capacity. If you can't move well, you're only forcing your body to train in a limited range, and all that does is tell your body, hey, we're going to get really strong at being limited, but we want to open everything up first so that when we're training, we're covering all the parts of our movement, we're covering what we're missing, we're covering everything we have, and that way we have the strongest body and the healthiest range of motion. For those of you who are here and want to start asking any questions, go ahead now. I'm going to make sure that we have this link available on our YouTube playlist. And yeah, you guys take it easy.